I was hitchhiking because I had no other choice that night. My car had broken down hours earlier on a long stretch of rural highway that barely showed up on my phone map. The engine overheated and then died completely. I tried calling for help, but there was no signal. The sun went down fast and the temperature dropped with it. The road was quiet in a way that felt wrong, like it had been abandoned on purpose. No houses, no lights, just trees on both sides and a thin line of cracked asphalt stretching into darkness. I waited beside my car for a long time, hoping another vehicle would stop. At first I felt embarrassed standing there, then annoyed, and finally nervous. Every passing minute made the place feel more hostile. I could hear insects and the wind moving through the trees. Sometimes I thought I heard footsteps in the distance, but when I focused there was nothing there. My phone battery was almost dead, so I stopped checking it. I stood there with my thumb out whenever headlights appeared far down the road. A few cars passed without slowing down. Some sped up when they saw me. I understood why. If I had been driving, I probably would not have stopped either. Still, each car that passed made me feel more alone. I kept thinking about how far I was from the nearest town. I had driven for hours without seeing anything familiar. I could not even remember the name of the last place I passed through. Eventually, a pickup truck appeared, slowed down, then pulled over ahead of me. I felt a wave of relief so strong my legs felt weak. I grabbed my backpack and walked toward it. The truck idled loudly. The windows were dark. I could not see the driver clearly, just a shape moving inside. The passenger door opened. I hesitated for a moment. Something about the situation made my stomach tighten. But the cold was getting worse, and the road was empty again. I climbed in. The inside of the truck smelled like oil and old fabric. The seats were worn and stained. The dashboard was cluttered with empty bottles, fast food wrappers, and tools I did not recognize. The driver kept his eyes on the road as he pulled back onto the highway. I noticed his hands right away. They were large, dirty, and covered in small cuts and scars. His grip on the steering wheel was tight, like he was always ready to react. We drove in silence. I told myself that silence was normal. Not everyone liked to talk. Still, it felt heavy. The road ahead was only lit by the headlights, and everything beyond that was pure black. The truck stayed at a steady speed, not too fast, not too slow. I watched the side mirror, half expecting to see something following us, even though that made no sense. As minutes passed, I started noticing small things that bothered me. The driver never adjusted the radio, even though it was off. He never looked at me, not once. His posture was stiff, and his shoulders were tense. I tried to relax, but my body stayed alert, like it was waiting for something bad to happen. The truck turned off the main highway onto a narrower road without slowing down. I assumed it was a shortcut at first, but the road became rougher with potholes and loose gravel. Trees closed in on both sides. There were no signs, no lights, nothing to suggest we were heading toward a town. My chest started to feel tight. I watched the dashboard clock. Time felt stretched, like we had been driving much longer than we actually had. My thoughts became scattered. I started replaying everything that led me there, wondering if I had made a mistake getting into the truck. I told myself I was being paranoid. People took back roads all the time. The truck slowed down near a small clearing. I saw a structure ahead, barely visible in the headlights. It looked like an old building, maybe a shed or a workshop. The driver pulled over and stopped the engine. The sudden silence was loud. My ears rang. He stayed in his seat for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. I could see more of his face now. His skin looked rough and tired. His eyes were focused straight ahead, not on me. I noticed dried mud on his boots and dark stains on his sleeves that I did not want to think about. I felt a strong urge to get out of the truck. Every instinct in my body told me something was wrong. I reached for the door handle, trying to stay calm. The handle did not move. I tried again, harder. Nothing. The lock had been engaged without me noticing. My heart started pounding. I could feel it in my throat. I looked around, searching for something, anything that could help. The windows were up. The building outside looked abandoned. No lights, no other vehicles, no sound except my own breathing. The driver finally turned his head slightly, just enough that I could see his expression. It was empty, not angry, not excited, just flat. That scared me more than anything else could have. He opened his door and stepped out. I stayed frozen in my seat, listening to his footsteps crunch on gravel. He walked around the front of the truck and stopped at my door. The handle clicked, and the door opened. Cold air rushed in. I forced myself to move. I climbed out slowly, keeping my backpack on my shoulders. My legs felt shaky, but they held. I stood there beside the truck, the headlights casting long shadows across the ground. The building loomed behind him, dark and silent. He walked toward the building, then stopped and looked back at me. He made a gesture with his head, like he expected me to follow. I did not move. I took a step back instead. For a few seconds, nothing happened. We just stood there, staring at each other. The night felt thick, like it was pressing down on us. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Then I ran. I ran back toward the road without thinking. My backpack bounced against my back. Branches scraped my arms and face as I pushed through the trees. I expected to feel hands grabbing me at any moment, but nothing touched me. I reached the road and kept running, my lungs burning. I did not stop until I saw headlights in the distance. I stepped onto the road and waved both arms wildly. The car slowed down. I did not care who was inside. I just needed to get away from that place. This time I stayed alert. The car stopped and I got in. The driver took me straight to the nearest town. I got out at a gas station and went inside, shaking and exhausted. I did not tell anyone what happened. I just sat there until morning. Later, I found out that the road we turned onto was not a shortcut. It was a dead end. The building was an old slaughterhouse that had been closed for years after several people went missing in the area. The truck was never found. I think about that night often, about how close I came to not making it out. I do not hitchhike anymore. I would rather walk for miles in the dark than trust a stranger on an empty road again. Every time I see a pickup truck slow down near me, my chest tightens, and I remember the silence, the locked door, and the feeling that I was not meant to leave that place alive. I was 23 when it happened, old enough to know better and young enough to think I could handle things on my own. I had left a seasonal job at a warehouse 2 towns over and missed the last bus back because my shift ran late and my phone battery died. The road outside the industrial area was long and flat, lined with weeds and broken fences, the kind of place where cars moved fast and nobody walked unless they had no other choice. I started walking at first, thinking I could reach the highway ramp and maybe catch a ride there. After an hour, my legs hurt and the night air turned cold in that slow creeping way that gets into your bones. I stuck my thumb out more as a habit than a plan. I had never hitchhiked before. I grew up hearing that it was dangerous and stupid. But that night my head was full of tired thoughts and small worries, and the idea of another 2 hours of walking felt worse than the risk I was pretending not to see. Cars passed without slowing. Headlights washed over me and disappeared. The sky was clear but moonless, and the road felt empty in a way that made every sound stand out. A loose sign rattled somewhere. An animal moved in the grass. My own footsteps sounded too loud. After a while, a pickup slowed down. It did not stop at first, just crawled along beside me for a few seconds. I could see the shape of the driver through the window, but not the face. The truck rolled forward again, then stopped ahead of me with its hazard lights blinking. I walked up to it. The passenger door was already unlocked and open. I did not hear any words. The driver did not turn his head. He just waited. I told myself that people give rides all the time. I told myself that the danger was exaggerated. I told myself that I was being rude by hesitating. I climbed in. The inside of the truck smelled like oil and old food. The seat was torn and the floor was dirty with dried mud. The dashboard lights were dim, making everything feel half-hidden. The driver pulled back onto the road without looking at me. I noticed then that the radio was off and the windows were closed. The only sound was the engine and the tires on asphalt. As we drove, I tried to calm myself. I watched the road and the passing lights. I noticed small things because it helped keep my mind busy. The speed stayed steady. The driver kept both hands on the wheel. He wore a jacket that looked stiff, maybe leather or something like it. His hair was short. I could not see his eyes clearly. The mirrors were adjusted just slightly wrong, angled too far up. We passed the turn where I would normally head home. I waited, thinking maybe he would slow down or turn around. He did not. We kept going straight, farther into an area I did not know well. The buildings thinned out. The streetlights became spaced farther apart. I told myself he might live this way and would drop me off later. I told myself not to panic over nothing. The road narrowed and the pavement got rough. We crossed a set of train tracks and then turned onto a side road without slowing. This road was darker, lined with trees and no houses. My chest felt tight. I looked at the door handle and then away. I did not want to seem nervous. I told myself that if I needed to, I could ask to be let out. I did not do it. The truck drove for a long time. Minutes stretched in a way that made it hard to tell how much time had passed. I thought about my family and how I had not told anyone where I was. I thought about my dead phone in my pocket. I thought about how stupid this all felt now that it was too late to easily undo. The driver made another turn, this time onto a dirt road. The sound of gravel under the tires was loud and final. The truck slowed. Trees closed in on both sides, their branches forming a dark tunnel. I felt sweat on my palms even though it was cold. My mind started racing, looking for ways out that were not there. The truck stopped. For a moment nothing happened. The engine idled. The hazard lights were off. There were no other cars, no lights, no buildings. Just trees and darkness. The driver reached down between the seats. My body went stiff. I watched his hand, every movement sharp and clear. He pulled up a flashlight and turned it on, pointing it down at the floor, not at me. He leaned forward and I saw then that his hands were shaking slightly. He opened his door and stepped out. The cold air rushed in. I stayed frozen, unsure if moving would make things worse. He walked around the front of the truck, the flashlight beam moving over the ground. He did not look at me. He walked to the back and then out of sight. I sat there listening. I could hear him moving around, something metal clinking. I thought about running. I thought about locking the door. I thought about how far the trees were from the road and how easy it would be to get lost in them. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid he could hear it. After a minute, he came back into view. He was holding a shovel. He leaned it against the side of the truck. Then he walked to the passenger side and opened my door. The flashlight beam moved up and stopped on my chest. He still did not say anything. He just stood there, blocking the way out. I slid out of the seat slowly, my legs weak. The ground felt uneven under my shoes. The night air smelled like damp earth. The trees loomed close, making the space feel smaller than it was. The driver stepped back a little, enough to let me stand but not enough to run past him easily. He turned and walked a few steps down the dirt road, then stopped and pointed the flashlight toward a spot off to the side where the ground looked disturbed, darker than the rest. I followed his gaze. My stomach dropped. The shape in the dirt was wrong, too regular, like a long, shallow trench that had been filled in poorly. The reality of the situation hit me all at once, heavy and crushing. This was not a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was planned. I thought about the stories I had heard, the warnings I ignored. I felt a deep sense of regret, sharp and clear. The driver moved again, this time picking up the shovel. He walked toward the disturbed ground. His movements were slow and careful, like he was tired or sore. He stopped and looked back at me. The flashlight beam moved with his head, catching my face. Something changed then. I do not know if it was the look on my face or the way my body shook, but I saw hesitation. Just a flicker. His shoulders sagged a little. He looked down at the shovel, then at the ground. I took a step back without thinking. He did not react. I took another. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body was slow, heavy with fear. I took another step, then another, moving toward the trees instead of the road, because it felt like the direction he was not watching closely. The moment stretched. The flashlight beam wavered. He adjusted his grip on the shovel. I turned and ran. I crashed through branches and brush, not caring about the noise. Thorns tore at my clothes and skin. I tripped and fell, scraping my hands and knees, then got up again. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they would give out. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. After what felt like forever, I stopped and listened. I could hear my own breathing, loud and ragged. I heard the distant engine of the truck start and then fade. I did not hear footsteps. I did not see any light. I crouched behind a tree and waited. Time passed slowly. My body shook with cold and shock. I tried to calm my breathing, afraid that any sound would give me away. I thought about how close I had come to disappearing without anyone knowing what happened. I thought about how easily it could have ended there, in that shallow trench by the dirt road. Eventually, I made my way back toward the road, moving carefully and stopping often. When I reached the edge of the trees, I saw that the truck was gone. The road was empty and silent. I stepped out and started walking, not caring where it led as long as it was away from that place. Hours later, I reached a gas station just before dawn. The lights were bright and harsh, and the normal sounds felt unreal. I went inside and sat on the floor against a wall until someone noticed me and called for help. I told the police what happened. They went to the road I described and found the disturbed ground. They found other things too. I never found out what happened to the driver. I do not know if they caught him or if he disappeared into another road, another night. What I do know is that I was lucky in a way that still makes me uneasy. I think about how small the difference was between me walking away from that truck and me stepping into it. I think about how tired I was and how that tiredness almost cost me everything. I do not hitchhike now. I do not trust the easy solutions that show up when you are desperate. That night stays with me, not as a dramatic story but as a quiet warning. The world is full of ordinary-looking dangers, and sometimes they stop right beside you with the door already open. I started hitchhiking because I ran out of money and time at the same moment. My car had broken down 2 days earlier on a long rural stretch of highway that cut through farmland and empty fields. I had tried everything I could think of. I checked the battery, pushed the car to the shoulder, waited for hours hoping someone would stop. Nothing happened. My phone battery died by the second night. I slept in the car with the windows cracked, listening to trucks pass far away, feeling the ground shake under me. By morning, I knew I had no choice. I needed to move, and the only way was to stick out my thumb and hope the wrong person did not stop. I left most of my stuff in the car. Just a backpack with water, a jacket, and some old snacks. The sky was gray and low, the kind of sky that feels heavy even when it is not raining. The road smelled like wet dirt and oil. I walked for almost an hour before the first car slowed down. It was an old sedan, dull paint, small cracks in the windshield. I hesitated too long and it sped up and disappeared. My heart was already beating hard, even though nothing had happened yet. I kept walking. I tried to stay calm and look normal. I reminded myself that most people were just people. I had hitchhiked once before years ago and nothing bad happened. That memory felt thin now, like it belonged to someone else. This road felt different. There were no houses nearby, no stores, no signs. Just fields, trees, and the road stretching forward and backward forever. Another car passed, then a pickup truck, then nothing for a long time. I felt the sun come out briefly, then disappear again. I was tired before anything even happened. My legs felt heavy, my mouth dry. I thought about turning back to the car, but that felt worse. At least here I was moving. Late in the afternoon, a van slowed down. It was white, plain, no markings. The side door had a dent, and the back windows were dark. It rolled to a stop a few feet ahead of me. I stood there, frozen. This was the moment where you decide fast or lose the chance. I told myself to be smart. I walked up slowly and looked inside through the passenger window. I could see the outline of a man in the driver's seat. Middle-aged, thin face, short hair. The inside of the van was dark behind him. I got in. The door closed with a heavy sound that made my chest tighten. The seat smelled old, like sweat and dust. The engine sounded rough. The van pulled back onto the road and picked up speed. I stared straight ahead, watching the road slide under us. I told myself everything was fine. People give rides. This happens all the time. The man drove without looking at me much. His hands were tight on the wheel. The van did not have anything inside that I could clearly see behind the front seats. Just darkness and shapes. I shifted slightly and felt something hard under the seat. I did not look down. The road went on and on. We passed a few intersections without slowing down. I started to feel uneasy about how far we were going. My sense of direction was already off from walking all day. I tried to remember the map in my head. The longer we drove, the more certain I became that we were not heading toward any town. The man's driving changed. He sped up, then slowed down for no reason. He drifted slightly within the lane. I watched his reflection in the windshield. His face was stiff. His jaw moved as if he was grinding his teeth. I told myself not to imagine things. Fear feeds on nothing. Still, my hands were damp, and my heart felt like it was pushing against my ribs. I shifted again, and this time I looked down. There was a metal bar bolted to the floor under the seat, part of the frame maybe, but it looked wrong. Too exposed. The van turned off the main road onto a smaller one. The pavement changed to rough asphalt. Trees closed in on both sides. The light dropped fast like someone turned down a switch. I felt cold even though it was not cold out. I knew then that I had made a mistake. I thought about opening the door and jumping, but the speed was too high. I thought about waiting, about watching for a chance. I tried to slow my breathing. I told myself to remember details. The road, the trees, the smell, everything. I wanted my brain to stay clear. The van kept going. No other cars passed. The road narrowed and started to bend. Branches brushed the sides of the van. The sound made my skin crawl. The man leaned forward slightly, focused. After what felt like a long time, the van slowed down. The road turned into packed dirt. We came to a clearing with an old building set back among the trees. It looked like a small warehouse or a farm storage place. No lights, no other vehicles. The van stopped. The engine idled. I sat still, my body tight. I could hear my own breathing loud in my ears. The man did not turn to look at me right away. He reached down toward the side of his seat. My eyes followed the movement without thinking. That was when survival took over. I pushed the door open with all my strength and fell out onto the dirt. I scraped my hands and knees, but I got up immediately and ran. I did not look back. I ran toward the trees because that was the only direction that was not blocked by the van. Branches hit my face. Roots grabbed at my feet. I almost fell several times, but I kept moving. I heard the van door slam. I heard footsteps behind me, fast and heavy. I ran harder than I ever had in my life. My lungs burned. My vision narrowed. I focused on staying upright, on pushing forward. The ground dipped and I tumbled down a small slope into a shallow ditch. I landed hard on my side and rolled. Pain exploded in my shoulder. I bit down to keep from making noise. I crawled into thick brush and pressed myself into the dirt. I did not move. The footsteps came closer, then stopped. I could hear breathing, not mine. Leaves shifted. I held my breath until my chest hurt. I stayed still even when bugs crawled on my skin. Even when my muscles screamed to move. Time stretched out. I do not know how long I stayed there. Eventually the sounds moved away. I heard the van engine start. It revved once, twice. Then it drove off. I stayed hidden long after the sound was gone. When I finally moved, it was slow and careful. I crawled back up the slope and looked around. The clearing was empty. The building was silent. The van was gone. I did not go near the building. I walked in the opposite direction, deeper into the trees, until I found another dirt road. I followed it for hours. Night came. I kept walking. Sometime near dawn, I reached a paved road. I collapsed on the shoulder when I saw a passing car stop far ahead. This time I waited until the driver stepped out and called for help on a phone before I approached. I was taken to a small hospital. The police came. I told them everything I could remember. The van, the road, the building. They searched the area later, but they did not find much. The building was empty. No van was registered nearby that matched exactly. My car was recovered days later. It was still where I left it. I do not hitchhike anymore. I do not take rides from strangers. I think about that van sometimes, about how close I came to not getting out. The fear is still there, quiet but solid, like a weight inside me. I listen to it now. I trust it, because that day on that road, luck was the only thing that saved me, and I know luck runs out. I started hitchhiking because my car broke down in the middle of nowhere and I had no money left for a tow. I was coming back from a short construction job that ended earlier than planned. I was supposed to drive straight home, but the engine overheated on a long empty highway that cut through farmland and patches of woods. No towns nearby, no lights, just a narrow road and fields that stretched far into the dark. I waited with my hazard lights on for almost an hour. A few cars passed, but none slowed down. My phone battery was low and there was no signal anyway. It was late evening, the sky already dark, the air cold enough to make my hands stiff. I locked the car, grabbed my backpack, and started walking toward the direction I thought might lead to a town. I never liked hitchhiking. I had heard enough stories to avoid it my whole life. But standing alone on that road, listening to the wind move through the crops and insects buzzing around the headlights of passing cars, it felt like the only option. I stuck my thumb out more out of desperation than hope. After a long time, a dark pickup truck slowed down and pulled over ahead of me. It was an older model, dirty, with dents along the side and a cracked tail light. I hesitated, but the truck stayed there, engine running. I could not see the driver clearly, just a shape inside. I told myself it was better than freezing out there all night. I walked up and got in. The inside smelled like old fabric, oil, and something sour. The dashboard was dusty and cluttered with random items like receipts, empty cups, and tools. The seat was worn down, the fabric thin and rough. The driver was a middle-aged man, heavy-set, with a beard that looked untrimmed for years. He did not look at me much, just kept his eyes on the road. The truck started moving again, and the sound of the engine filled the silence. I noticed there was no music playing, no radio noise, just the hum of the tires and the engine. At first I felt relieved. We were moving. Lights from the road passed over us again and again. But after a few minutes, something started to feel off. The driver did not ask where I was going. He did not even glance at me. Most people would at least want to know where to drop someone off. I tried to tell myself not everyone likes small talk. Some people are just quiet. But the longer we drove, the more tense I felt. We passed the point where I thought the nearest town should be. Instead of more lights or buildings, the road grew darker. Trees replaced the fields. The headlights barely cut through the darkness ahead. I checked my phone. No signal. Battery almost dead. I started paying closer attention to everything. The way the driver held the wheel. The fact that the door handle on my side felt loose when I shifted in my seat. The locks were manual and I noticed my door was not locked. The driver turned off the main road onto a smaller one. No signs. No street lights. Just gravel crunching under the tires. My heart started pounding. I thought maybe he knew a shortcut, but the road kept narrowing. Branches scraped against the side of the truck. The trees were close now, closing in around us. I felt stupid for getting in. I felt trapped. I looked around for anything that could help me if things went bad. There was a heavy flashlight near my feet, a metal thermos, a screwdriver in the door pocket. None of it made me feel any safer. The driver slowed down and turned onto what looked like an old service road. The ground was uneven, the truck rocking side to side. The engine sound echoed differently here, like we were deep inside the woods now. I thought about jumping out, but we were going too fast, and the road was rough. If I fell wrong, I could break something. Then I would be completely helpless. The truck finally stopped. The engine stayed running. We were in a clearing. No houses, no lights, just trees surrounding us and dirt under the tires. The headlights pointed toward a pile of old scrap metal and wooden boards stacked unevenly. The silence felt heavy. My ears rang. I watched the driver from the corner of my eye. His hands stayed on the wheel. His breathing was slow and steady. I felt a cold sweat running down my back. My mind raced through every bad story I had ever heard about hitchhiking. After what felt like forever, the driver reached down and turned off the engine. The sudden quiet was worse. I stared straight ahead, my body stiff. I could hear insects outside. Something rustled in the trees. The driver finally moved. He reached behind his seat and pulled out a thick roll of duct tape. That was the moment everything inside me dropped. I did not think. I reacted. I grabbed the heavy flashlight near my feet and swung it as hard as I could toward his head. The impact was solid and loud, like hitting a piece of meat wrapped in cloth. He slumped forward, hitting the steering wheel. I kicked the door open and fell out of the truck. I hit the ground hard, scraping my hands and knees, but I got up and ran. I ran blindly into the woods, branches cutting my face, roots grabbing at my feet. I did not look back. I just kept running until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they would give out. Eventually, I collapsed behind a fallen tree, gasping for air. I listened. I waited. I expected to hear footsteps, shouting, an engine starting, but there was nothing. After a long time, I slowly stood up. I moved carefully, staying low, using the trees for cover. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I needed distance. I walked for hours. My phone died completely. My clothes were torn and dirty. Every sound made me jump. Just before dawn, I reached another road. A real one, paved, with signs and markings. I felt like crying from relief. When a car finally stopped later that morning, I did not get in. I waved them down and asked them to call the police instead. I told the police everything. They went back to the area with me. The truck was gone. The clearing was still there, but empty. No driver, no duct tape, no signs of a struggle except my footprints and a few drops of blood near where I had fallen. They said they would look into it, but I could tell there was not much to go on. I eventually made it home. Life went back to normal on the surface, but something in me changed. I still think about that night whenever I see someone hitchhiking on the side of the road or whenever a truck slows down near me. I do not hitchhike anymore. I would rather sleep in a broken car or walk all night than get into a stranger's vehicle again. Whatever that man planned to do in that clearing, I stopped it by luck and panic, not strength or courage. If I had hesitated even a second longer, I do not think I would be here to remember it. That night taught me that real danger does not announce itself. It does not look dramatic or unreal. Sometimes it is just a quiet drive down a dark road with the wrong person behind the wheel. I still remember the exact weight of the backpack on my shoulders when I stepped onto the edge of the highway. It was heavier than it should have been, not because of what was inside, but because of what I was trying to leave behind. I had quit a job I hated, packed what little I owned, and decided to move across the country with no real plan except to get as far away as possible. I did not have enough money for buses or trains, and I did not want to ask anyone for help. Hitchhiking felt like the only option that matched my state of mind. I told myself it would be temporary, just until I reached a city where I could start over. The highway stretched out in both directions, flat and empty, cutting through fields that looked dead even though it was not winter yet. The sky was pale and washed out, like it had been drained of color. Every few minutes, a car or a truck would pass, the sound growing loud and then fading again. I stood there with my thumb out, trying to look calm, trying not to look desperate. I kept telling myself that people hitchhike all the time, that it was normal, that I was not doing anything wrong. After almost an hour, a faded white van slowed down and pulled over onto the gravel shoulder. It was old, with rust along the bottom and a dent in the side panel. The windows in the back were darkened, so I could not see inside. I hesitated for a moment, longer than I should have, but then I reminded myself that I could not afford to be picky. I walked toward it, my boots crunching on the gravel. The side door slid open. I could see the front seats and part of the dashboard, cluttered with empty cups and crumpled fast food bags. The smell that drifted out was a mix of old fabric, gasoline, and something sour. I climbed in and pulled the door shut behind me. The engine started again, and we merged back onto the highway. As the miles passed, I stared out the window and tried to relax. The landscape changed slowly, fields giving way to low hills and scattered trees. I focused on the road ahead, on the rhythm of the tires against the asphalt. I told myself to stay alert but not paranoid. I had heard stories, of course, but I had also heard stories of kindness, of strangers helping each other without expecting anything in return. After a while, I noticed small things that made me uneasy. The van did not stay in one lane for long. It drifted slightly, then corrected, then drifted again. There were deep scratches on the inside of the door near where I was sitting, like something sharp had scraped against it over and over. The back of the van was separated from the front by a metal partition with a small, barred window. I could not see through it clearly, but I thought I saw movement back there, something shifting when the road curved. I told myself it was just cargo, maybe boxes or tools. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. We stopped at a gas station as the sun began to lower in the sky. The light turned yellow and heavy, stretching shadows across the concrete. I got out to use the bathroom and splash water on my face. When I came back, the van was parked farther away from the entrance, near the edge of the lot where the light did not quite reach. I noticed then that the license plate was bent and dirty, the numbers hard to read. Back on the road, the sky darkened faster than I expected. Clouds rolled in, thick and low, blocking what little light remained. The highway narrowed, turning into a two-lane road that cut through dense forest. Trees crowded close on both sides, their branches forming a dark tunnel. There were no streetlights, no houses, no signs of life. My phone showed no signal. The van slowed down, then turned off onto a smaller road without warning. Gravel crunched under the tires again. The trees grew closer, pressing in. I felt a tightness in my chest, a quiet alarm going off in my head. I thought about asking where we were going, but I stayed silent. I did not want to draw attention to myself. I watched the road, memorizing turns, trying to keep track of direction even though I knew I would not be able to explain it later. The road ended in a clearing with a few abandoned buildings, old warehouses or barns that looked like they had not been used in years. The van slowed to a stop. The engine idled, loud in the sudden silence. I could hear insects outside, a constant buzzing that felt too loud, too close. The door did not open right away. Seconds stretched. I became aware of my own breathing, shallow and fast. I felt trapped, even though nothing had happened yet. I told myself to stay calm, to wait. The side door finally slid open. Cold air rushed in. I stepped out, my legs stiff. The ground was uneven, patches of dirt and weeds. The buildings loomed around us, dark and hollow. I felt exposed, small. I realized then that this was not a drop-off point, not anywhere near a town or even another road. There was no reason to stop here. My mind raced, trying to come up with explanations that did not involve danger. Maybe the van had a problem. Maybe this was a shortcut. Maybe I was overreacting. I took a few steps away from the van, pretending to stretch. I kept my backpack on, ready to move. I scanned the area, looking for a path, a place to run if I had to. The trees were thick, the undergrowth tangled. Running would be hard. The side door slammed shut behind me. The engine revved, then cut off. The sudden quiet was worse than the noise had been. I turned slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The back door of the van opened. What I saw inside made my stomach drop. The back was empty of cargo, but it was not clean. The floor was stained dark in places. There were marks on the walls, handprints and smears that looked old. Straps hung from hooks along the sides, frayed and worn. The smell that came out was stronger now, metallic and sour. I knew then that I had made a mistake, a terrible one, and that I might not get another chance to fix it. I stepped back, then another step, my mind screaming at me to move, to run. My foot caught on something, and I stumbled, nearly falling. Panic surged, hot and overwhelming. I turned and ran toward the trees, my backpack bouncing against my shoulders. The ground was rough, roots and rocks hidden under leaves. Branches scratched my face and arms. I could hear movement behind me, heavy footsteps, fast. I did not look back. I focused on staying upright, on putting one foot in front of the other. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were made of lead. The forest swallowed me. The light faded quickly under the thick canopy. I crashed through bushes, not caring about the noise. I just wanted distance, any distance. I tripped and fell hard. The air knocked out of me. Pain exploded in my knee and hands. I scrambled up, ignoring it, and kept running. Eventually, I could not go any farther. My chest felt like it would burst. I slowed to a walk, then crouched behind a fallen tree, trying to quiet my breathing. I listened, straining to hear anything beyond my own pulse. The forest was alive with small sounds, leaves rustling, insects clicking. I thought I heard footsteps, then realized it was just my imagination, my fear filling the silence. I stayed there for a long time, not daring to move. My body shook uncontrollably. I wrapped my arms around myself, pressing my back against the rough bark. My mind replayed what I had seen in the van, over and over, each detail sharper than the last. When I finally gathered the courage to move again, it was fully dark. I had no idea where I was or which direction led back to the road. My phone was still useless, no signal, the battery draining. I knew that staying in the forest all night was dangerous in its own way, but going back toward the clearing felt impossible. I chose a direction and started walking, slow and careful. I tried to move quietly, stepping around branches instead of over them. My knee throbbed with every step. I did not know if I was being followed. Every snap of a twig made me flinch. After what felt like hours, I saw a faint glow through the trees. A light, steady and white. Hope flared in my chest, fragile but strong enough to keep me moving. I pushed toward it, ignoring the pain, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The trees thinned, and I stumbled out onto a narrow road. A single streetlight stood nearby, humming softly. The road was empty, but it was a road, real and solid. I nearly collapsed with relief. I did not stop there. I kept walking, afraid that if I stayed still, whatever had been chasing me would find me. My legs moved on their own, driven by adrenaline and fear. Eventually, I reached a small town, just a few houses and a closed store. I knocked on the door of the first house I saw, my hands shaking so badly I could barely make a fist. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Authorities were called. I told them everything I could remember, every detail, even the ones that felt small and stupid. They went to the clearing, searched the area. The van was gone. There were tire tracks, but they led back to the road and disappeared. The buildings were empty, just old structures falling apart. They found nothing else. I spent days afterward replaying it all in my head, wondering what would have happened if I had frozen, if I had hesitated 1 second longer. I thought about the stains in the van, the straps, the scratches. I wondered how many times that clearing had been used, how many people had stood where I stood and not made it out. I did not hitchhike again. I found other ways to get where I needed to go, slower ways, harder ways, but safer ones. Even now, years later, I cannot stand the sound of gravel under tires or the sight of a white van on the side of the road. At night, when things are quiet, I sometimes smell that sour, metallic odor, even though I know it is not there. I got away, and that is the only reason I can tell this story. The ending is clear because I am still here, because I ran when I had the chance, because luck or instinct or something else pushed me to move instead of freezing. I do not think about what almost happened as much as I think about how close I came to disappearing without anyone ever knowing where I went. That thought stays with me, heavy and real, a reminder that some choices only give you one chance to survive. I left the city in the late afternoon with a small backpack and a phone that was already below half battery. I had not planned to hitchhike that day. The bus I was supposed to take broke down on the highway just outside the city, and after hours of waiting with no clear answers, people slowly started finding other ways to leave. Some called family, some paid for taxis. I had no one nearby and not enough money for a long ride. I convinced myself that standing on the side of the road with my thumb out would only be temporary, just until I reached the next town. The road was wide and loud at first. Cars rushed past without slowing. The The sun was low and bright, cutting through my eyes and making it hard to judge who was behind the wheel. I stood there longer than I expected. My legs got tired. My mouth felt dry. Every few minutes I checked my phone even though there was no signal. I kept telling myself this was normal, that people still hitchhike sometimes, that I was just being impatient. Eventually traffic thinned out. The city noise faded behind me. The road narrowed and trees pressed in closer on both sides. The sun dropped lower and the air cooled fast. That was when the first car slowed. It did not stop fully. It rolled past me slowly, the driver looking straight ahead, then sped up again. That should have been a sign. I ignored it. Another 20 minutes passed. I was starting to think about finding a place to sleep when a dark van pulled over ahead of me. It stopped far enough that I had to walk to it. That also should have been a sign. I remember noticing how quiet everything suddenly felt. No insects, no wind, just the sound of my own steps on the gravel shoulder. The side door of the van was already open. I did not see anyone inside at first. The inside smelled old and dusty, like damp fabric that had never dried fully. There were no seats in the back, just bare metal and a few stained blankets piled in a corner. I hesitated, but the driver leaned forward from the front seat. I could see the side of his face. He did not turn fully toward me. He just nodded once, like this was all routine. I climbed in and slid the door shut behind me. The sound of it closing felt final in a way I could not explain. The van pulled back onto the road right away. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, holding my backpack close. The ride was rough. Every bump in the road traveled straight through the metal and into my bones. As we drove, the light outside faded from orange to gray. Trees blurred past the small dirty windows. I tried to calm myself by focusing on details. The way the engine whined slightly higher than it should. The way the blankets smelled faintly of sweat and oil. The way the driver never checked the mirror. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Time felt stretched and thin. I realized we were not heading toward the next town. I had checked the map earlier. This road was supposed to curve east after a while. We were going straight, deeper into an area I did not recognize. I told myself the driver might know a shortcut. People always said locals knew shortcuts. The van slowed and turned onto a smaller road. The pavement ended quickly, replaced by dirt and loose stones. The trees closed in even more, branches reaching over the road and blocking what little light remained. The van's headlights cut narrow tunnels through the dark. My phone buzzed once. Low battery warning. No signal. I thought about asking where we were going. The idea of making any sound suddenly felt wrong. My throat felt tight. I listened instead. The driver's breathing was steady. Too steady, like he was not reacting to the rough road at all. The van stopped. For a moment nothing happened. The engine kept running. The headlights stayed on, pointed at a wall of trees. I could hear insects now, loud and close. The smell inside the van seemed stronger, heavier. I shifted slightly, and the floor creaked under me. The engine shut off. The silence after that was complete. No road noise, no wind, just insects and the ticking of hot metal cooling. The driver got out. I heard his door open and close. His footsteps moved away from the van. I stayed frozen, staring at the closed side door. I told myself he might just be checking something, maybe using the bathroom. I counted my breaths to stay calm. Minutes passed. I noticed then that the side door handle was missing on the inside. There was only a smooth metal plate where it should have been. I ran my fingers along it, slow at first, then faster. No latch, no handle. My heart started pounding hard enough that I was afraid the driver would hear it if he was nearby. I leaned forward and pressed my ear to the door. I could hear him moving around outside, footsteps on dirt, something being dragged. The sound was not rushed. It was careful. I pulled my phone out again even though I knew it was useless. The screen glowed weakly, then dimmed further. 1%. I thought about the blankets in the corner. I did not want to look at them. I did anyway. One of them was folded in a way that did not look accidental. There were dark marks along the edge that looked old and ground in. The footsteps stopped. The side door rattled slightly from the outside. Not opening, just testing. My chest felt tight, like I could not get a full breath. I pressed myself as far back against the wall as I could, wishing I could disappear into the metal. The door opened. Light flooded in from outside, harsh and white. The driver stood there, blocking most of it. I could see him clearly now. He was taller than I expected, broad, his clothes dirty and worn. His face was blank, not angry, not calm, just empty. He stepped closer. I reacted without thinking. I kicked at the door with both feet, using the moment it was open. My foot hit his leg. He stumbled back just enough. I lunged forward, squeezing past him and falling out of the van onto the dirt. I ran. I did not look back. Branches tore at my arms and face as I pushed through the trees. The ground was uneven, full of roots and rocks. I fell once hard, scraping my palms raw. I got up and kept running, my lungs burning, my legs shaking. I could hear him behind me, not running, just walking fast. Branches snapping, leaves crunching. He was not shouting. That scared me more than anything. I reached a slope and slid down it, losing my footing again. At the bottom was a narrow stream. I splashed through it without slowing, hoping it would break my trail. I kept going until my body felt like it might give out. Eventually, the sounds behind me faded. I did not stop right away. I kept moving until I could not anymore, then collapsed behind a fallen tree, pulling leaves and dirt over myself as best I could. I lay there for a long time, listening. My heart slowly stopped hammering. My breathing eased. I did not hear footsteps again. When the sky started to lighten slightly, I moved. My body ached all over. My hands were bleeding. My phone was dead. I had no idea where I was. I walked until I found the road again. Took hours. When I finally saw it, the relief almost made me cry. I stayed on the shoulder, walking in the direction I thought led back. Every sound made me jump. Every vehicle that passed made my stomach twist. Eventually, a truck stopped. This time, I paid attention. I stayed where I was. I watched the driver get out, watched his movements, listened to his voice calling out. I did not get in. I waited until a police car drove by and flagged it down instead. They found the van later that day, abandoned on that dirt road. Inside were blankets and stains they could not explain. The driver was never found. I do not hitchhike anymore. I do not stand on the side of roads. When a car slows near me, my body still tenses. Sometimes at night I smell that damp fabric again, sharp and heavy, and I remember how quiet the world felt when the engine shut off, and how close I came to never leaving that place at all. I started hitchhiking because I had no other option. My car broke down on a long stretch of highway that cut through empty land and old forests. There was no signal on my phone and no towns close enough to walk to before night. The sun was already going down, and the air was getting colder fast. I stood near the shoulder with my backpack at my feet, trying to look calm and normal even though my stomach felt tight. Cars passed without slowing. Some drivers did not even turn their heads. The road felt forgotten, like it was only used by people who wanted to avoid attention. The trees on both sides leaned inward, and the wind moved through them in slow, heavy waves. Every few minutes I checked behind me, not because I heard anything, but because the silence felt wrong. After almost an hour, a dark pickup truck slowed down and pulled over a short distance ahead. I felt relief at first. My legs were tired, and my hands were numb. I picked up my bag and walked toward the passenger side. The inside of the truck smelled like oil and old fabric. The dashboard was dusty, and there were empty bottles rolling on the floor near my feet. I got in and shut the door. As the truck started moving again, I told myself I was lucky. I focused on the road ahead, on the lines passing under us. I tried to relax my shoulders. The truck stayed quiet except for the engine and the sound of tires on pavement. I kept my eyes forward and watched the trees blur by. After some time, I noticed the truck was not staying on the highway. It took a smaller road that branched off into thicker forest. I assumed it was a shortcut. I told myself not to overthink it. People who live in rural areas often know roads that maps do not show. The further we went, the darker it became. There were no streetlights, no houses, just trees and dirt roads and the steady sound of the engine. I noticed scratches on the inside of the passenger door. They were deep and uneven, like something hard had been dragged across the metal again and again. I tried not to stare at them, but my eyes kept going back. The road turned rough and the truck slowed. We passed an old fence that had fallen over, then what looked like the remains of a small building. Only part of one wall was still standing. I felt my chest tighten. This was not a normal route. I thought about opening the door and jumping out, but the truck was moving too fast for that. I thought about my phone, but there was still no signal. I adjusted my seatbelt slowly, trying not to draw attention to myself. The truck finally stopped near a clearing. The headlights lit up a wide patch of dirt and dead grass. Beyond that was only darkness. No houses, no other vehicles, no sound except insects and the engine ticking as it cooled. I realized then how far from help I was. If something happened here, no one would hear it. No one would come. The door on my side unlocked with a sharp click. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I moved slowly, trying to keep my breathing steady. I grabbed my backpack and stepped out onto the dirt. The air smelled damp and rotten, like leaves that had been sitting too long. I took a few steps back, putting space between myself and the truck. I kept my eyes on it, watching for any sudden movement. The truck stayed still for a moment, then the engine turned off. The headlights went dark, and the clearing was swallowed by night. My eyes struggled to adjust. Shapes became shadows. Shadows became nothing. I stood there for what felt like a long time, unsure what to do. Running into the forest felt dangerous. Staying near the truck felt worse. I could hear my own breathing, loud and uneven. Then the truck engine started again. The headlights came back on, blinding me for a second. The truck slowly turned around, tires crunching on gravel, and drove away the way we had come. It did not speed up. It did not hesitate. It just left. I stood there alone, shaking, trying to understand what had just happened. I did not know why I had been brought there or why I had been let go. I did not know if that was luck or something else. I waited until the sound of the engine was completely gone before I moved. I turned in a slow circle, trying to find any sign of a path or road. The clearing connected to a narrow dirt trail that led deeper into the trees. The road we had come from was barely visible now. I chose the road. Even if it led nowhere, it was better than walking blind through the forest. I started walking, keeping a steady pace. Every sound made me tense. Every snapping twig made me look over my shoulder. Time stretched out. My legs burned, and my throat felt dry. I thought about stopping, but the idea of standing still in the dark was unbearable. I kept going. Eventually, I saw faint light ahead. Not headlights, but something softer. As I got closer, I realized it was a small gas station. One pump, one building. The lights buzzed faintly. I felt relief so strong it almost made me weak. I reached the station and leaned against the wall, trying to calm down. My hands were shaking badly. The place looked old but maintained. Someone had been there recently. I stayed there until morning. When the sun came up, I found a working phone inside and called for help. A tow truck came for my car later that day. I never hitchhiked again after that night. I still do not know why that truck picked me up or why it left me where it did. I only know that I was alone with someone who took me far off the road and could have done anything they wanted. The fact that nothing happened does not make it less frightening. In some ways, it makes it worse. I was completely at someone else's mercy, and I walked away without knowing why. That is what stays with me. That is what still keeps me awake at night. I started hitchhiking because I ran out of options, not because I liked the idea. My car had broken down 2 days earlier on a long stretch of highway that cut through dry land and empty towns. The tow company said it would take days before they could get to me, and the small motel nearby was already eating through the little cash I had. I needed to get back to the city for work or I would lose my job. I told myself it was temporary. Just a ride or two to reach a bus station or a place with more traffic. I had never hitchhiked before. I had only heard stories. Some were harmless. Some were not. The highway was straight and wide, with faded white lines and cracked asphalt. Trucks passed by fast, their wind shaking my clothes. The sun was harsh during the day, and at night the cold crept in quickly. I stood with my thumb out for hours. Many cars slowed down and then sped up again. Some drivers looked at me and shook their heads. Others did not look at all. I started to feel invisible, like I had already disappeared from the world and no one had noticed yet. Late in the afternoon, a dark sedan pulled over about 50 feet ahead of me. The car did not stop right next to me, which felt strange. I walked toward it slowly, scanning the area around me. The land was flat, with low bushes and empty fields stretching out on both sides. No buildings, no other cars parked nearby, just the road and the wind. I opened the passenger door and got in. The inside of the car smelled old and dusty, like it had been closed up for a long time. The seats were worn, with small cracks in the leather. The dashboard was clean but outdated. I noticed there were no personal items inside. No bags, no trash, no decorations. Felt less like someone's car and more like a tool. The driver pulled back onto the highway. I tried to stay calm. I told myself this was normal. People were private. Not everyone kept things in their car. The road stretched ahead of us, long and empty. The sun was starting to dip lower, painting the sky orange and gray. As we drove, I became more aware of the silence. There was no radio on, no music, no sound except the tires on the road and the wind outside. I shifted in my seat and looked out the window. We passed a sign for a small town, but the driver did not slow down or signal to turn. I assumed they were just passing through. After a while, I noticed something else. The car was not maintaining a steady speed. It would slow down slightly, then speed up again over and over. Not enough to be dangerous, but enough to be noticeable. My body tensed without me realizing it. I tried to focus on my breathing and the rhythm of the road. We passed another sign, then another. Each one marked towns and exits we did not take. The sky grew darker. The sun dropped below the horizon, and the light drained out of the land. The fields turned into dark shapes. The road felt longer than it should have been. I glanced at the dashboard clock. It was still working. The time bothered me. It felt like we had been driving much longer than the clock suggested. I told myself I was just tired and stressed. Still, the feeling did not go away. The driver finally turned off the highway onto a narrower road. There was no sign, just a sudden turn. Gravel crunched under the tires. My stomach tightened. I looked around for houses or lights, but there were none. The road was surrounded by trees now, tall and thick, blocking the sky. The headlights cut a narrow path through the darkness. I told myself this could still be normal. Maybe they lived nearby. Maybe they were taking a shortcut. I did not want to jump to conclusions. I had heard too many stories about fear turning nothing into something. The road went on for miles. It twisted and dipped, moving deeper into the trees. The air inside the car felt heavy. I noticed the door handle on my side looked loose, like it had been pulled on many times. The lock was manual, not automatic. It was pushed down. I did not remember locking it. I tried the handle gently. The door did not open. I told myself that was normal too. Cars locked automatically sometimes. Still, my heart started to beat faster. I kept my movements small. I did not want to draw attention to myself. The driver slowed down near a clearing. There was a dirt path leading off the road, barely visible. The car turned onto it. The path was uneven, full of bumps and ruts. The car rocked side to side. Branches scraped against the sides, making sharp, sudden sounds that made me flinch. We stopped. The engine stayed on. The headlights illuminated a small open area surrounded by trees. There was nothing else there. No buildings, no other cars, just dirt, trees, and darkness. I sat still, my hands clenched in my lap. My mind raced through possibilities. I thought about running. I thought about staying. I thought about how far we were from the road. I thought about how quiet it was. The driver shifted slightly. I noticed something then that I had not noticed before. Their hands. They were scarred, with old marks that looked like cuts and burns. The knuckles were swollen, like they had been broken more than once. The hands tightened on the steering wheel, then relaxed. The engine shut off. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I had felt before. No wind, no insects, no distant cars, just nothing. I tried the door again, harder this time. It still did not open. Panic surged through me, hot and sudden. My chest felt tight. I forced myself to slow down. I did not want to make a mistake. I looked around the car, searching for something I could use. There was nothing. No tools. No objects. The interior was empty by design. That realization scared me more than anything else. It meant this was not random. This car had been prepared. The driver leaned forward slightly. I could hear their breathing now. Slow. Controlled. My mind screamed at me to move. To do something. I unlocked the door and pulled the handle with all my strength. The handle came off in my hand. For a moment, I did not understand what I was looking at. Then it hit me. The door had been sabotaged. The handle had been weakened, ready to break if pulled hard. My throat tightened. I pressed myself back into the seat, holding the broken handle, my hand shaking. The driver opened their door and stepped out. The sound of boots on gravel echoed in the clearing. I watched through the windshield as they walked around the front of the car, moving slowly, like there was no rush. I knew then that this was real, not a misunderstanding, not bad luck. I had made a mistake that might cost me my life. The driver stopped in front of the passenger side door. I could see their outline in the headlights. They reached for the door handle from the outside. The door opened easily. That told me everything I needed to know. The door had only been disabled from the inside. I scrambled across the seat, climbing over the center console, trying to get to the driver's side. My movements were clumsy and desperate. I hit my knee hard against the dashboard and felt a sharp pain shoot up my leg, but I did not stop. The driver grabbed my arm. Their grip was strong, painfully so. I twisted and kicked, my shoe connecting with their leg. They stumbled back a step. It was enough. I threw myself out of the car and ran. The ground was uneven, and I nearly fell more than once. Branches tore at my clothes and skin. I could hear footsteps behind me, steady and heavy, not rushed. That terrified me. It meant they were confident. I ran blindly through the trees, my lungs burning, my vision narrowing. I did not know where I was going. I only knew I had to keep moving. The darkness swallowed everything. I could not see more than a few feet ahead of me. I tripped over a root and went down hard. Pain exploded through my side. I rolled onto my back, gasping for air. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Then I heard breathing again. Closer now. I forced myself up, ignoring the pain, and stumbled forward. The trees thinned suddenly, and I broke out onto another road. A real road, paved, with reflective lines. I ran into the middle of it, waving my arms wildly. My chest felt like it was on fire. My legs threatened to give out. Headlights appeared in the distance. The footsteps behind me stopped at the edge of the trees. I turned just long enough to see the outline of the driver standing there, watching. They did not follow me onto the road. A truck slowed down and stopped. I collapsed onto the asphalt, shaking uncontrollably. The driver of the truck helped me up and got me inside. I could not stop looking back at the tree line, expecting to see movement. There was nothing. The police found the sedan the next day. It was abandoned and wiped clean. The plates were stolen. There were no fingerprints, no signs of a struggle inside the car. It was like it had never been used. They searched the area where I had escaped. They found signs of foot traffic, old and new, paths worn into the ground, places where people had clearly been dragged or carried. They found personal items scattered in the woods. Shoes, wallets, phones. They never found the driver. I quit my job after that. I could not focus anymore. Every car that slowed down near me made my heart race. Every quiet moment felt dangerous. I moved to a place with people around, noise, lights. I do not hitchhike anymore. I do not trust empty roads or silent cars. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that clearing in the woods, about how prepared that car was, about how many people did not make it out. I know now how close I came to being one of them. I did not plan to hitchhike that day. I had a bus ticket in my pocket and enough money for food and a cheap room. I was trying to get home after a short job that ended earlier than expected. The bus station was closed when I arrived. A sign on the glass said the next bus would be in the morning. The town was small and quiet and already getting dark. The wind was cold and steady and it cut through my jacket. I walked around for a while hoping to find an open place to sit or wait, but everything was closed. No motel lights, no gas station lights, just a few street lamps buzzing and a road that ran straight out of town. I stood there for a long time thinking about my options. I could sleep outside and wait for morning, or I could try to move on. I told myself that hitchhiking was not as dangerous as people made it sound. I had done it once before years ago and nothing bad happened. I was tired and I wanted to be closer to home by morning. I walked to the edge of town where the road widened and cars passed a little faster. I stuck my thumb out and tried to look normal and calm. Inside I felt uneasy, but I ignored it. The first few cars passed without slowing down. Headlights swept over me and disappeared. Each time a car went by I felt smaller and more exposed. The cold got worse and my hands went numb. I kept my thumb up and told myself that someone would stop eventually. After about 20 minutes, a dark pickup slowed down. Pulled onto the shoulder a short distance ahead of me. I walked toward it slowly and carefully. The engine was still running. The passenger door opened. I got in. The inside smelled like old fabric and oil. The seats were cracked and the floor was dirty. I noticed small things right away. Empty fast food bags on the floor. A stain on the ceiling. The radio turned low but not off. The driver was a man in his late 40s, maybe older. He wore a baseball cap pulled low. His face was tired and stiff. He did not look at me when I sat down. He just stared at the road ahead and started driving. I told myself not to think too much about it. Some people were quiet. Some people did not like small talk. I focused on the road and the passing lights. The town faded behind us and the road turned darker. Trees closed in on both sides. The headlights lit up only a narrow path ahead. The radio played static mixed with low music. The man kept both hands on the wheel. His knuckles were pale. As the miles passed, I started to notice that we were not following the main highway. The road became narrower and rougher. The lines faded. There were no signs, no other cars, just forest and darkness. I told myself it was a shortcut. Local drivers knew these roads. Still, my stomach tightened. I checked my phone. No signal. The screen light felt too bright in the dark cab, so I turned it off. The man drove at a steady speed. Not fast, not slow, just steady. The air inside felt heavy. The windows were up and the heater was on, but I still felt cold. I watched his hands on the wheel. There were scars on his fingers. Thin white lines that crossed his skin. I wondered how he got them and then forced myself to stop thinking about it. Time stretched. Minutes felt long. The road twisted and dipped. We crossed a small bridge over a creek. The water below reflected the headlights for a second and then vanished. I noticed a shape in the back seat covered with a tarp or thick cloth. It shifted slightly when the truck went over a bump. I told myself it was tools or equipment. People carried all kinds of things. Still, I leaned slightly toward the door without meaning to. The man finally glanced at me, just for a second. His eyes were dark and flat. No anger, no warmth, just empty focus. He looked back at the road. My heart beat faster. I tried to control my breathing. I did not want to show fear. I stared ahead and counted my breaths. We passed a rusted sign half buried in weeds. I could not read it. The road narrowed further and turned into gravel. The sound under the tires changed and echoed in the cab. Dust rose behind us and drifted through the headlights. I felt trapped. I thought about asking him to stop, but the thought of being left alone in that place felt just as bad. I stayed quiet. The truck slowed near a clearing. A small building sat back from the road. It looked like an old service shed or hunting cabin. No lights, no windows that I could see. Just a dark shape against darker trees. The truck rolled past it and continued. I felt a strong sense that something was wrong. Not sudden panic, but a slow, heavy certainty. My hands were sweating now. My mouth was dry. We drove for what felt like hours, though it was probably less. The road looped and crossed itself in strange ways. I stopped recognizing landmarks. My sense of direction vanished. I realized that even if I got out, I would not know which way to go. The man seemed to know exactly where he was going. His posture never changed. His grip on the wheel stayed firm. At one point, the truck slowed again. He turned onto a dirt path barely wide enough for the vehicle. Branches scraped the sides. Leaves brushed the windows. The headlights lit up a wall of trees ahead and then swung aside as the path curved. I felt a deep fear then. Not loud or sharp, just deep and steady. I knew I was somewhere I should not be. The path opened into another clearing. This one was larger. The ground was packed dirt and gravel. There were tire marks everywhere. Old ones and new ones layered over each other. The man parked the truck and turned off the engine. The sudden silence pressed in. No radio, no engine, just insects and wind in the trees. He sat still for a moment. I did not move. My body felt heavy. My mind raced. I looked at the door handle and then back at him. He reached toward the glove compartment. My chest tightened. He opened it slowly. Inside I saw maps and papers and something metal that caught the light. He closed it again and rested his hand on his leg. I realized then that this was not random. This place, this route, this moment, felt practiced, familiar, like he had done this before. The thought made my skin crawl. I thought about running, but I did not know where to go. The trees looked thick and endless. Night pressed in from all sides. The man finally moved. He leaned forward and reached toward the back seat. The covered shape shifted again. I saw the outline of something long beneath the cloth. My breath caught. My heart pounded so hard I thought he must hear it. I could not stay still any longer. Fear pushed me to act. I grabbed the door handle and shoved it open. The sound was loud in the quiet clearing. I jumped out and ran. I did not think about direction. I just ran toward the trees. Branches slapped my face and arms. Roots caught my feet. I stumbled and fell and rolled and got back up. I heard the truck door slam behind me. I heard footsteps on gravel, then dirt. I ran harder. My lungs burned. My legs shook. I crashed through brush and low branches. The forest was dense and dark. Moonlight barely reached the ground. I could hear him moving behind me. Not fast. Steady. Like he knew I would tire. Panic surged. I pushed myself faster. After some time, I could not hear him anymore. I did not know if that meant he stopped or just slowed. I kept moving. My body felt numb. My thoughts blurred. I tripped again, and this time I stayed down longer. My chest heaved. I forced myself to listen. Just wind. Insects. My own breathing. I crawled under a fallen tree and pressed myself into the dirt. I lay there shaking. Time passed. I do not know how long. My muscles cramped. My throat hurt. I was afraid to move. Afraid to make a sound. Every rustle felt like him coming closer. Eventually, the cold became worse than the fear. I could not stay there forever. I had to move. I crawled out and walked slowly in what I hoped was one direction. The forest seemed endless. Trees all looked the same. I scratched my hands and legs on thorns and branches. Blood dried on my skin. My shoes filled with dirt and leaves. Hours later, I saw a faint light through the trees. It looked like a distant star at first. I moved toward it carefully. Step by step. The light grew brighter and steadier. It was a road. A real road with pavement and lines. Relief flooded me so hard my knees buckled. I stepped onto the road and fell to my knees. A car passed and did not stop. Another passed and slowed. Headlights washed over me. The car stopped. A woman got out and called for help from her phone. I could not speak. I just shook. She wrapped a jacket around my shoulders and stayed with me until the police arrived. I told them everything I could. The pickup, the roads, the clearing. They listened and took notes. They drove me to a hospital and treated my cuts and bruises. I slept for almost a full day. When I woke up, the fear was still there but distant. Like a shadow. The police searched the area I described. They found the clearing. They found tire marks. They did not find the truck. They told me there were many old paths and private lands in that forest. Hard to track. They said I was lucky. They said I did the right thing by running. Days later, they called me again. They had found something deeper in the woods, not far from where I had been hiding. They did not give details, just said it confirmed that leaving the truck saved my life. I did not ask questions. I did not want to know more. I went home and tried to return to normal. Took time. For weeks, I jumped at every engine sound. Every passing truck made my chest tighten. I stopped traveling alone at night. I stopped trusting strangers easily. The world felt sharper and more dangerous than before. Now, when I think about that night, I do not think about monsters or ghosts. I think about quiet roads and dark forests and the way normal things can hide terrible intentions. I think about how close I came to disappearing without a trace. I survived because I listened to a feeling I almost ignored. I have never hitchhiked again.